You're missing a chair? Maybe the cleaning people.
We have an empty one in the back?
Yeah, I thought you were in the back too. Steve gave you a sign. After I said you had those. Take more than a bathroom break or whatever, and you just need to be patient. We're trying to move the trial along, okay? So, thank you. All right, and I'm sorry, I don't, this probably isn't the most appropriate time, but, media in the war room, or whatever we call it, one more cup, and everybody is not allowed to bring any liquids of any kind whatsoever. My staff is, and our county people are not going to be picking up trash that you all could pick up. Okay, and that also means downstairs in the jury assembly room. So one more cup, one more water. Let's just have some manners on picking up after ourselves, okay? All right, sorry I had to bring that up right now.
Is this witness still under oath, Judge?
Yes, she's still under oath. Is that okay, or do you want me to?
That's fine.
All right.
May I proceed?
Yes.
Good morning, Investigator Pop.
Good morning.
Judge,
All right, why don't we look at these now?
Okay.
Is this, are you keeping track?
Just write them down. Yeah, that's okay with the court. Okay, good morning again.
Good morning.
So we saw a lot of pictures yesterday and heard about some search warrants that were conducted that you were present for. And I'd like to sort of divide what we do this morning into sort of two categories, the firearm and the ammunition. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. As to the firearm, I think where you left off yesterday is ultimately that firearm was destroyed in the test pit. Fair?
Not destroyed, but broken.
Yeah, the word broken, that I think I heard you use yesterday It's fair to say that the firearm can't be put back in the original condition that it was in at the time of the incident. Is that fair?
I believe it could be put back together with replaced parts. But as far as, in my terms, destroyed meaning no longer in existence, it is not the case.
Right. No, of course. The gun and its broken parts still exist, right?
Yes.
But as being part of the investigation and entrusted with the evidence in this case, the gun will never be in exactly the same condition that it was in on October 21st. Fair?
Yes.
Then I want to talk to you now about the ammunition piece of this. And the investigation into the source of the lethal bullet in this case led you to executing a search warrant at Seth Kenny's prop house, right?
Yes.
And you knew that he had provided star-line brass, silver ammunition to the set, correct?
Yes.
What you were investigating at that time was whether it was star-line brass, silver, and only dummies, or if it was star-line brass, silver, and he also had live ammunition at his prop house, correct?
Yes.
And you did know that Seth Kenny kept live ammunition at his prop house, correct?
I believe at that time we were looking for live ammunition, yes.
Right, but you were aware of whether you found the exact correct live ammunition that matched perfectly the live ammunition on the movie set. You did ultimately recover some live ammunition, and you had probable cause to get a search warrant, right?
Yes.
And did that concern you that in a prop house that's sending out ammunition for movie sets, that there was both live ammunition and dummy rounds?
Yes.
So I want to take a step back for a second. When you go out to collect evidence on a day like October 21st, 2021, you bring with you your Nikon camera, right?
Yes.
You have gloves with you, right?
Yes.
And in a perfect world, you're trying to get to the evidence and the state of the evidence as quickly as possible. Fair?
Yes.
And so you did respond to this scene, and the first item that you collected that ended up broken was the prop gun, right?
Yes.
And when you got there, you knew that someone had touched it without gloves on, right?
Yes.
You knew that when somebody collected it, they didn't take a photo, right?
Yes.
But you did take that into evidence, and that was sort of the first item in this case that you were collecting and entrusted to keep vouchered and maintained for the course of this investigation. Is that fair?
Yes.
And it was a critical piece of evidence. Isn't that true?
Yes.
And so as you continue after that moment into the scene, you're looking for additional evidence. Fair?
Yes.
And physical evidence is critical evidence in an investigation, right?
Yes.
Because, witnesses and their memories can change. Witnesses can say one thing one day and another day, but physical evidence pretty much stays the same,
I'm
right?
just objecting to a compound question.
Physical evidence stays the same, right?
Yes.
And you logged all the evidence you collected in this case?
Yes.
And all the evidence collected by law enforcement in this case was ultimately logged by you.
Yes.
And by logging it, you also make it available for the defense so that we have visibility into what in fact you collected.
Yes.
And one way you figure out as you're going through a scene what evidence is relevant is you can talk to your fellow officers, right?
Yes.
You can talk to witnesses, right?
I do not. As part of I'm not an investigator, I'm a technician. So my concern is with the physical evidence. I don't do any of the interviews.
No, I know you don't do formal interviews, but in this case, you did talk to Seth Kenny, right? You're not forbidden to speak to somebody who's at a scene.
No, I do believe we had some casual conversations, yes.
Well, but there are times where a witness could say in your presence, hey, that glove is very important. And they would say it to you in Corporal Hancock, and you would
I
know.
object to the hypothetical.
Overruled.
As I was saying, you went to Corporal Hancock could be at a scene, And somebody could say, hey, that glove was used. And you, as a technician, would say, okay, that witness is pointing out that glove, that could be important. I'm going to note that. And once I confer with Corporal Hancock, potentially take that into custody, to take an inventory.
Yes, that's something that could happen, yes.
And the other thing that you do is, and you talked about this a little bit on your direct, which is you can learn information and decide what to forensically test. Fair?
Yes,
So in this case, for example, Mr. Baldwin's clothes had red on them and you tested it for blood, right?
yes,
And it turned out it was movie set blood, right?
yes,
Meaning it wasn't actually blood. Find the shell casing. And I thought this was on just a moment ago.
All right, Joe, come on, we need to fix something.
I can't.
This in the way. It was up there. It was up there that you had a problem.
And I'm putting State's Exhibit 29.
I'm just a minute, Mr. Spiro. I'm wondering if
Oh.
you're trying to figure this out right now.
Thank you very much. Thank you both. And I'm showing you Exhibit 29, and in a moment I'll show you Exhibit 28. And this is the shell casing that you recovered in this case that housed the lethal projectile, correct?
yes,
And so, and in fact, you were able to then recover the actual bullet piece of the ammunition because you learned from Mr. Baldwin that it was at the hospital with Mr. Souza, right?
yes,
And so you were then able to go to the hospital, and we heard from that officer, and collect the other piece of the ammunition, correct?
yes,
And that's an example, right, of learning something from a witness and making a decision based on it, right?
yes,
Okay. And as to the prop gun, because you learned from Mr. Baldwin that he just manipulated the hammer, you didn't test the trigger of the firearm, correct?
I'm sorry, you're asking if I myself tested the,
Trigger, yeah.
I'm not qualified to do that, so it was not completed by myself.
Well, fair to say that because you learned that from Mr. Baldwin, it impacted the way that you evaluated the evidence in this
I
case.
object to the form of question. Can we approach?
You spoke to Mr. Baldwin at the scene, correct?
Briefly, yes.
Okay. And he informed you that he just manipulated the hammer and that impacted your future testing, correct?
I don't recall what he exactly stated on the scene.
Okay. Well, let me just approach you for a moment.
Counsel, I'll need a copy.
Sure. We'll provide you a copy.
Before you approach the witness.
We're also going to need, while they're looking for that, why don't we approach? Page and line, please.
Yep.
Page and line, counsel.
Yep. Page 3, lines 9 through 11. And I'm showing the witness. Does this, and as you can see from up here, this is a lapel camera from 1021, a lapel recording from. And do you see this answer here?
Yes, I see it.
And so, does that refresh your recollection that Mr. Baldwin told you that he cocked the gun?
I don't recall that conversation.
Okay. But you don't dispute that it happened?
No, I don't dispute it. I just don't recall it.
So did, but when you made the request,
Objection, let's approach.
Just to go back to the spent shell casing for a moment, was the spent shell casing collected from inside of the church or on the cart?
On the cart.
And another question is, do you know if Mr. Baldwin's fingerprints or DNA were on the trigger of the firearm?
I do not know those results off the top of my head.
Okay. Is there a better witness that may come in to tell the jury that?
Yes.
Okay. And, you were interacting, as we were left off, with Mr. Baldwin at the scene and spoke to him, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And after speaking to him, did you in fact test the hammer of the, did you in fact request to test the hammer of the firearm for prints and DNA?
Same objection. That doesn't lay the foundation. It has to go to why she did what she did.
It's the first question, and then I'll ask why she did or didn't.
Overruled.
Did you, after speaking to Mr. Baldwin, did you then test the hammer of the gun for DNA or fingerprints, or request that it be done?
The request that was made was after a conversation with the lab, which essentially was asking them what assistance they could provide. I believe the request was made for latents and DNA. I don't recall the specifics of what on the item they were going to specifically test. I don't know their requirements or standards when they receive a firearm. Most labs would do the testing on the entirety of the gun, but they might break it down further and do just the trigger, just the hammer, just the rough areas. I'm not certain. That's a question for their lab.
Right, but I'm just asking you, Investigator Papa, when you made the request, did you specify, given what we've learned now, and when you got to the prop cart, you could not tell from looking at it whether or not anybody had altered or moved any of the evidence, correct?
Correct.
And if somebody did, that would be a pretty serious problem in a case like this, wouldn't it?
It would be a problem in any case, yes.
Did you ever interview or review any interviews of Sarah Zachary?
No.
But one thing that you did know at this time for certain is that you were looking for Starline brass silver .45 ammunition, correct?
At that time, no, we did not know that that's what we were looking for.
When did you learn that?
That was learned. Suspected live rounds were Starline brass with a silver primer.
So all of the live rounds at the movie set were Starline brass, nickel primer, live, right?
Yes.
And this idea came up early in the investigation that what if somebody sabotaged the set and put those live rounds there? Do you recall that?
Yes.
And that was quickly dismissed in this case as not something that law enforcement thought to be realistic. Fair?
Yes.
But you also needed to investigate whether somebody from outside of the Rust set was responsible for injecting these live ammunition into the Rust set. Fair?
Yes.
And so you continue to investigate that as this case proceeds and you executed search warrants, correct?
Not myself personally investigating it, but I believe that was something that was being investigated.
So, we looked at, and I'm just going to show you Defense A1. And what's this a picture of?
These were some of the rounds that were located loose on top of the cart.
And these live rounds being loose on top of the cart, you don't know whether those live rounds were there at the time of the incident, right?
Correct.
And again, these were all Starline brass, nickel primer, live, correct?
Yes.
And you were also not certain at times when you would collect rounds, whether or not they were live or dummies.
Correct.
Some rounds you submitted to the FBI to process to figure that out.
Yes.
And if we could look at State's Exhibit 27, can you tell me what that is?
This is a photograph of the silver primers on the 2 rounds that were later discovered to be live that were on the top of the cart.
And so in this box you then collect, which is Defense A2, right? What was your understanding of this box?
My understanding was this was the box handed to Lieutenant Benavidez that was being pulled from at the time to load the firearm. I was then placed in his unit and later collected by myself.
And when you looked inside of that box, State's Exhibit 17, what did you find?
These were the rounds inside of the box.
And can you tell the jury the significance of that round?
Yes, this round with the silver primer was a live round.
But you don't know whether somebody was rifling through this box and just missed one, do you?
No.
And you also showed the jury that these Starline brass nickel live rounds were found in other places on the set, right? This is State's Exhibit 16.
Yes.
And what is this?
This is a close-up of one of the gun holsters that has a live round in it.
Okay. And State's Exhibit 15.
This is a close-up of the gun holster that was belonging to Mr. Baldwin that has a live round in it.
And was then 15, this is 15. Was 16 the one that was the other actor, Jason Eccles?
Yes.
Okay. And so Mr. Eccles, another actor on the set, turns out that he, as he acted, as he performed, had a live bullet in his bandolier, correct?
Yes.
And you have no reason to think Mr. Eccles had any idea that was there, right?
Correct.
Your working theory, as you evaluated the ammunition and looked at the similarity between the Starline nickel live and the Starline nickel dummies, is that they could have been easily commingled. Fair?
Yes.
In other words, somebody could have mistaken one for the other, right?
Yes.
And so when you conduct then a search warrant on the church, you find additional evidence, right?
Yes.
And you talked about search warrants in your direct examination, but I just want to orient the jury a little bit to what that is. A search warrant is where you go to a court and you swear out a warrant, and the warrant tells you what you can search for inside of a dwelling or a location, right?
Yes.
And you tell the court what information you have and what you'd like to look for. Fair enough?
Yes.
And unlike somebody sort of, walking into the precinct and voluntarily giving you evidence, one of the things about a search warrant is you don't have to tell the person you're coming before you go, right?
Yes.
So as you're going into execute the search warrant on the church, and the warrants in this case, you did discuss that with Corporal Hancock, correct?
Yes, I believe we had some brief conversations about the search warrants.
And the warrant for the church, it didn't indicate that there was any specific crime you were looking for. Is that fair?
I don't recall.
And so when you went inside of the church, you were looking for evidence, right?
Yes.
And you remember, as you ended your direct examination yesterday, Ms. Morrissey, the prosecutor, said, you keep all of this evidence so that if anyone who wants to bring any evidence, you have it, right?
Yes.
Okay. And one of the things you found in the church was the shot list for the dead, right?
I don't recall that.
Do you recall collecting paperwork inside the church?
Yes.
Okay. And
Your Honor, I've already indicated to Mr. Spiro that I object to some of these, so we can approach now. I wish we had dealt with it previously.
no, I think I can just lay it and introduce it.
Well, she said she objected. Please don't talk among yourselves or anyone else about the evidence received here in court.
Urge you to leave your pads on the chairs. All right, jury.
All right, we're going to recess.
Hey there, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to watch our coverage of the Alec Baldwin trial. Look, you know,
Okay, we're getting a plug from Law and Crime here. So I was just wondering how much time have they spent so far today in sidebars and how much in doing actual testimony? Because it feels to me like it's mostly sidebars. Oh dear. So let me take a look. I had some stuff pulled up. Oops. Let's see. I've got some stuff for doing on. Oop. During breaks. My friend sent me a text saying it's Trump sentencing today, but it was postponed to September 18th because of the Supreme Court decision on immunity from criminal prosecution. So let me see. Everything is muted, so I don't have any sound that we don't want. Okay, here we go. I'm just trying to find my playlists. Oh, there we go. Let's see. We were mentioned the other day about Alexi Treviso. We were going to be doing her trial in August, and it's been postponed. Let's take a look at that story. Just as soon as I get things set up here. Okay. Here we go. Oh.
I'm sorry. It came out of me and I didn't know what to do
Lexi, I told you about this.
Questions are arising over what jurors will and won't be allowed to hear next month at the trial of a New Mexico teenager facing serious charges of killing her baby. We break down what we can expect the court to do in the case of Alexi Trevizo with Professor of Law Jules Epstein. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. The state Supreme Court out in New Mexico could decide a very important legal issue in a nationally recognized case. This is the case of now 20-year-old Alexi Trevizo, who's been charged with first-degree murder and tampering with evidence in connection with the death of her newborn. Yeah. So hospital workers, they found a newborn baby dead in an Artesia General Hospital bathroom last January, and Trevizo claimed she didn't even know she was pregnant.
I've never seen anything like that, and I pray to God I never see it again.
And the legal issue we're talking about right now all surrounds what Trevizo allegedly said at the hospital and whether it can come into evidence during her trial. It's actually a really fascinating legal issue, as well as an incredibly important piece of evidence in this case. So I'm going to give you a little bit of backstory here. January 27th, 2023, the then 19-year-old high school student sought medical attention for what she thought was lower back pain. And while at the hospital, later around 1:30 in the morning, she unexpectedly went into labor.
We did a pregnancy test on her, showed positive. She was denying that she had sex. Then she said she had to go to the bathroom. She went to the bathroom. She was in there for quite a while. We kept knocking on the door. Finally, we got her to open the door, and there was blood and shit everywhere. She was cleaning it up. Okay. So we took her back to the room, and I was afraid that she knew she was pregnant. She had done something to herself. Mm-hmm. So the doctor started doing a vaginal exam on her. We had the lady come to clean the bathroom. She put the baby in the trash can, and then she put another clean liner over the top of it. Oh, wow. Okay. So when they looked in there, there was no trash in there, but it was underneath the clean bag. The baby's dead. Okay, we have him in trauma too, but she killed the kid.
Yeah. How old was the baby?
I don't know. It's full term. She just had it. She had it in the bathroom. Was what happened, and then whatever she did, I don't know. She's gonna lie. She wouldn't tell us she's pregnant.
And as hospital staff went about their regular duties, this is when a harrowing discovery was made. The lifeless body of a newborn baby shoved to the bottom of the trash can. No one around Trevizo knew what was going on, not even her own mother, apparently. Now, I want you to listen very carefully to what Trevizo allegedly says here.
We discovered a dead baby in the bathroom.
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. He came out and me and I didn't know what to do.
Lexi, I told you about this.
But
I just asked you, baby, to tell me the truth.
It was not crying or nothing.
What did you do to it? Okay, stop right here. Stop. Number one priority, guys. Number one priority is she just had a baby. I don't know if she's delivered the placenta. She's bleeding significantly.
Yeah. Like how big is the baby?
It's full term.
What? 9 months?
Nothing was crying.
Lexi, have you watched the news of the girls that what they do to their babies and what they go to jail?
Nothing was crying.
I'm sorry about this, but in terms of delivering a baby and it looked like you tried to hide it, we do have to have the police involved.
And nothing was crying. It came out with nothing.
I know. But the baby's gonna have to be taken for autopsy and there'll be an investigator and everything.
And it's been reported that it was determined via autopsy the baby died of asphyxiation and was not a stillborn. And speaking with several witnesses, including hospital staff and Trevizo's boyfriend at the time, she was charged with first-degree murder and tampering with evidence. Her defense attorneys, though, later made the arguments that her statements at the hospital shouldn't be allowed in at her upcoming trial, saying doctor-patient privilege was violated, her Miranda rights were violated, and guess what? The district court sided with her, sided with Trevizo's defense. And now prosecutors are appealing the decision to the state Supreme Court. According to KRQE News, District Attorney Diana Luce says in part, quote, All I can say is that obviously it was evidence that we believe was proper, evidence that we believe that we should be allowed to use, and we respectfully disagree. She continues on to say, quote, "Is this really just a medical issue that is private and confidential, or were there some type of actions that rise to the level of criminal intent? We believe that it rises to the level of criminal intent. Our job is to protect children, especially any infant who cannot protect themselves." And the DA's office says that they're committed to prosecuting this case. There's no timeline on when exactly the state Supreme Court could decide to take up this issue. However, it's now unlikely, seems, that the case will go to trial as planned in August because the DA's office is awaiting an answer for their request on reversing that decision. And this case marks the third time in 2 years something like this has happened, with a New Mexico teenager allegedly putting their baby in the trash, which is just kind of unbelievable to think about. Hey, we'll get right back to the story in just a minute, but I want to thank our incredible sponsor here on Sidebar, Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm. Look, if you should find yourself in a position where you're hurt and you need legal representation, forthepeople.com/LC Sidebar. Let's get into the law of this, what could happen, and I am joined by one of our favorites here on Sidebar, evidence expert, Edward D. Albaum Professor of Law, Director of Advocacy Programs at Temple University Beasley School of Law, Professor Jules Epstein. So good to see you again, sir.
Likewise, honored to be here.
So one of the first things that the defense argued, and it seems that the district court agreed, was that there are issues of doctor-patient privilege and that was violated when those conversations were handed over to authorities. Would you agree with that?
Well, that's an issue. I'll agree with that. So New Mexico has a doctor-patient privilege, just like we talk about an attorney-client privilege, or what you say to your priest or your imam or your rabbi, that certain discussions are meant to be private and to stay private, because otherwise people won't talk to their doctor or talk to their lawyer. There was certainly a medical person in the room in that conversation where the mother was also sort of interrogating her daughter. The appropriateness of that we can leave for another time. New Mexico law has been interpreted by New Mexico courts to say that if this is truly a doctor-patient interaction and not willfully disclosed to third parties, then those words are as private as if you said them in a confessional or in a lawyer's office. The comment you played before from the district attorney, which was something like, well, there's supposedly a medical thing here, but we think this is important criminal evidence, that doesn't mesh. It doesn't matter if it's discussing a crime. If you're saying it to the doctor as part of your care, it's protected. What I think is going to have to happen is that the court is going to have to say, with her mom in the room, is that part of the privilege? Because sometimes when the third party is present, that takes the privilege away. They're going to have to say, were you really talking towards your medical care? Reasonable minds might be able to differ on the answer to that, but it is indeed a legitimate claim that the defense raised.
Her attorney, Treviso's attorney, Gary Mitchell, said the privilege applies from the time she went to the hospital, and it applies to everybody there. Everything that takes place from the time she first went to the hospital, everything the doctor and the nurses said, they could not give that out without a waiver from my client, and we didn't waive it. Now, the state argues that this was not a HIPAA violation, that she waived her rights because she started talking to doctors and her mother, and police happened to be in the room. So giving those statements, what's your take on that, Professor?
So the doctor-patient privilege that New Mexico has is independent of HIPAA. HIPAA is a federal law about sharing information, and I'm no HIPAA expert.
But you could certainly pretend to be, and we wouldn't know the difference. That's how good Jules Epstein is. But yeah.
I'm not going to try that. But I'm not sure everything you say physically in a hospital pertains to the treatment. And it may be you're in a room with another patient and their family's there and everybody can hear, right? So there may be limitations on that rather broad claim of what the lawyer said. But look at what's going on in the moment there.
Before these animals were adopted, before big spooning, little spooning, and under spooning, before becoming robots from outer space, before making a best friend, these animals were all rescued. And before thousands more can find their happy homes, they need your help to get there.
This young woman is bleeding. They're trying to figure out, how do we treat the bleeding? How do we stanch it? How do we protect her life? And this discussion is going on in that context. That's a stronger argument that this is medically related. Again, I don't think that having my mom in the room ends the doctor-patient privilege. I'm not a judge in New Mexico. I can't say what they would.
Do you think it's also because of the age of Alexi Treviso that having her mom there, does that change the analysis?
I think it could cut both ways, right? I was with my dad when he was in his late 80s, and we were talking to the doctors together, and I think it was kind of important that I was there.
Sure.
She's 18, she's not 5, if that's what you mean.
Right.
But she's a young person she's there with her mother at one of the most emotional and physically potentially dangerous events in her life, a pregnancy that reaches birth. So I would like to think that the mere presence of a parent would not automatically eliminate doctor-patient privilege.
Let me ask you about this issue. So again, it seems the district court decided that way. We'll see which way the highest court, if they decide to take this case up, will decide it. Now, what about this issue? The idea that she was in custody, that she was detained, that her Miranda rights were violated. Her attorney, again, Gary Mitchell, said she didn't agree to have the doctor act as a police officer and help interrogate her with police officers in the room. At the time, they already had her in custody. She was not free to go. And apparently, the doctor waited till police arrived to ask what had happened with the baby. What's your take on that one?
So I didn't realize till now that the police were already in the room. Okay. If police are in the room and say, "Miss, you're under arrest, she's in custody." If police are in the room and they're standing with their arms right like this, barring the door, they're creating a custodial environment. If a police officer is in the room, sitting there quietly, respectfully, I'm not sure a court would call that custody. So we would really need to know the dynamics of what's going on in that room, because Miranda warnings are about custody and the coercion, the pressure that custody would put on any of us. The second thing is, was this police directed, requested interrogation? If the police are sitting there and the doctor or the medical person is independently doing their job, I'm not sure that's interrogation. I haven't researched that in depth. So whether a court would say, well, the police took advantage of the doctor's inquiry and that somehow makes it an interrogation, I don't know. The more that the doctor deferred the questioning until the police were there, and if there's any police request, hey, doc, wait till we show up, then I think they have a claim. So I guess I just want to add, I'm sorry, I think we need to know some more of the real fine details of what was going on and how we got to that place.
That's totally fair. And I know this might be a difficult question, but generally speaking, so we have the government who is appealing this decision to a higher court because it's about, again, evidence potentially not being allowed into a trial. Very important evidence because these statements, saying I didn't know what to do. I'll read you the actual statement that she made. I'm sorry it came out of me and I didn't know what to do. You could see why prosecutors want a statement like that in a murder case. But typically speaking, do you think, A, this is a case that a higher court would take up, and B, when would they ultimately decide it?
So I'm going to give you a lousy answer here because there's no like formula, oh, they will, or they're 60% likely. It depends on that state. It depends on how engaged that court is in criminal law. There are a million policy things. It's also going to depend on each state can have its own rules for what's called an interlocutory appeal. An interlocutory means before the trial is over, or actually sometimes before it's begun. So it's going to depend. They may have standards for that. I've seen these things happen in Pennsylvania, and it takes months and months or years to get the appeal decided.
But but real quick, Professor, you would agree that it seems unlikely that this trial is going to happen now sooner rather than later while this issue is being litigated.
It puts it on hold.
Yeah. Which, by the way, before I let you go, I wanted your take on something else. So apparently, Treviso's defense attorneys filed a lawsuit against the hospital, and they have claimed wrongful death of the baby, saying it was the hospital's negligence and medication which was administered to Miss Treviso that's actually to blame for what happened. And there was an interview with Law and Crime Network Sierra Gillespie where Treviso's attorney said she's not the one responsible for her baby's death. Now, I'm not going to play you the clip, but I'll just tell you what he says. He goes, Treviso, she is shocked whenever she delivers a cause, the idea of what caused the baby's death. It had nothing to do with my client. She was not at fault. Professor, I know we still, there's a lot of details we need to know more about this, but that is very interesting. In terms of a defense for murder, I would imagine that would be used at a criminal trial, but also for a piece of litigation that it was the hospital to blame and not Alexi Treviso. Your initial thoughts about that?
So I've got two at least. Thought number one was when you first said the hospital is to blame, I was trying to figure out if the lawyer was saying they gave her medication, the medication affected her mind, the medication affected her judgment, she was not totally responsible. That's one meaning of those words. The other is, no, the medical care, no one strangled this child. It was the medicine or something. Obviously, I haven't seen the autopsy, but what you...
What's this?
My new pony, and I love him.
Yeah, no, thank you.
I ran the numbers on Quicken. It's totally in my budget. Bad, Mr. Sparkles.
Allowance, birthday money, and that.
You've described of it is the child was asphyxiated, which makes it sound like post-birth. So I think it's a really interesting legal approach. It certainly makes the hospital give up a lot of extra information that you might not get in the criminal process, because in the civil lawsuit, you get a lot of information. I'm curious as to whether, I should say it this way, I'm curious as to what medical experts the defense has. and what they might be saying about this.
Yeah, they basically said that, if I'm understanding this correctly, that they're accusing the medical staff at that hospital of injecting her with a cocktail of drugs, including morphine, and that is what killed the baby. So interesting that that's the avenue they might be going
So in
towards.
other words, the morphine caused the baby to be unable to breathe.
Right. That's my understanding.
If that's what it is, and there's some medical evidence to support that, that's really important. And let me add this then. First of all, this is tremendous lawyering by that lawyer, okay? And I looked him up, and he has quite a reputation as an excellent attorney in New Mexico, tremendous experience. It makes it all the more reasonable. It would be reasonable to begin with, but all the more reasonable for him to try and get those words out of the trial.
Sure.
Think of what's going on here. Here is a young woman who obviously has had some medication, who's had one of the most traumatic events in her life. And I'm not sure she's thinking super clearly when she says this. I didn't know what to do. What the hell does that even mean? Does that mean I didn't know what to do, so I strangled it? I didn't know what to do. I have a baby here. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I didn't know what to do. I have a dead baby here. Those words are the height of ambiguity.
That's a really,
But
really
obviously, they have at least one criminal interpretation. So you want to get the ambiguity stuff out of there, especially when you have competing theories on the medical issue.
Absolutely. I'm curious to see where this is going to go. This is clearly not a slam dunk case for the prosecution, even putting aside the legal issue of whether this can come into evidence. Now, the idea of a cause of death or a different interpretation, very interesting. Professor of Law, Jules Epstein, so good to see you. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, that's all we have for you.
Okay. This sidebar's going a lot longer than I thought it was. I've been listening to some commentary on another channel, and I got distracted because it was so engrossing. And apparently, there you might be crossing over into the issue of Baldwin's role as a producer, which in a pretrial hearing on Monday, the judge ruled would be limited in what they could produce. And it sounds to me like the door has been opened on that. So I think that's why we're having such a massive sidebar. They've just turned on the audio again, so they turned it back off. Getting our hopes up for nothing. Let me see. That stream that I've been listening to, I was thinking of playing the audio, but somebody apparently pressed the red button to end the stream by mistake, and so the stream is down over there. Let's see.
I don't have it.
Can't let the switch over there.
There we go. It looks like we're serious. People are standing up. The audio is on. So let's roll.
You may be seated.
Still good morning. We are, okay. Good morning again. So I'm just going to, we're going to tech issue, or this is, okay. We left off.
So he's not publishing it yet. I'm just telling him he's gonna publish it.
Right.
Well, you have to move for admission.
Okay. So I'm now moving for admission for A3 and A11.
I think he needs to, sorry, I think he needs to go ahead and lay the foundation.
I'm waiting for the foundation.
Yeah.
As you stated on direct, and we're just going to put up states 21. If I can publish that, it's in evidence. As you testified yesterday, you collected items from the church that you thought were relevant to this case, correct?
Yes.
And some of the things that you thought gave insight into what happened, correct?
Yes.
And including in those was a cop and the shot list, correct?
I believe there was paperwork that was photographed, but I don't believe it was collected.
Okay, well, I'm going to pass up to the witness what is marked as A3 and A11. Do you recognize these?
Yes.
And what are those?
It appears to be scene paperwork.
That you collected?
Yes.
And those are fair and accurate photographs?
Yes.
Okay, offer them as evidence.
I don't believe that's an adequate foundation.
What more do you want him to do?
But what we discussed at the bench, but I mean, obviously I defer to the court, but I'm relying on the conversation we had.
Well, all right, so they are conditionally admitted pursuant to the discussion up at the bench.
So I'm going to now publish A3. And can you read that last sentence?
Russ Colt cocked quietly now.
And I'm now going to publish 811. Let's see if this will allow me to zoom in focus. Can you read that, or does it not focus right?
I cannot read that.
Okay, I apologize. I'm going to pass it up to the witness. If it's not, oh, it works like this, I guess. I don't know if it does it. So it's supposed to focus on its own. It's supposed to autofocus, so this is not my fault, just so you know, investigate. Okay, permission to approach.
Macro on hammer as thumb cocks it. And then line 6 is frontal slow push in on Rust, his hat down, motionless.
Thank you. And you found and photographed these documents in the church in the vicinity of where Ms. Hutchins fell, correct?
I believe the first photograph, the first paper was, I don't recall where the second paper was located.
And if we look at it states
Full magical place.
Sorry?
you photographed them. And the reason you thought it was important is because you thought it reflected what would have happened in the scene, correct?
I understood that there was a mentioning of a firearm in the paperwork, which is why I thought it was important.
Right, because it's actually just because you thought to yourself at the time and that it actually described what he's doing, right?
I believe at the time, yes.
And you said to your fellow officers that you think it's important because it confirms Mr. Baldwin's statements, correct?
I don't recall stating that, but it could be something that I've stated.
And you indicated that you thought it was hers, meaning Ms. Hutchins' paperwork, correct?
I believe that one of those papers does have her name on it, which is why I thought it was hers.
Right. And the other paper that you already testified to, A3, was found around where she fell, correct?
Yes.
And it contains the shot list and the script for that day, correct?
I don't know
Objection,
exactly.
Foundation. Sorry.
So you have laid the foundation?
Yeah, did you believe at the time that what you were looking at may have reflected things that were supposed to occur in the church?
Yes.
You also recovered Ms. Hutchins' cell phone, correct?
At a later date, I believe.
And that was sent to Byron French and the investigation division to extract the cell phone results eventually, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Now, you tried to find video recording in the church, correct?
Yes,
But the video cameras for the scene in question did not record that day, so you were not able to find that. Fair?
they recorded a portion of that day. There was a recording that was recovered.
And you didn't find any live ammunition in the church?
Yes, there was one live round located inside the church.
There was, okay. And where was that found?
That was in Mr. Baldwin's holster.
Right, so, right, the bandolier that we were talking about before?
Yes,
Okay. And you have no reason to think that Mr. Baldwin had any idea that was there, right?
correct.
At that scene, and at this time in the investigation, Detective Khanna was in charge, correct?
Yes, I believe so.
So while you're now then leaving the church, and we're going to move on, okay, you have to figure out how ammunition works on a movie set, right?
Yes,
That wasn't something that you were familiar with before the incident in question, right?
correct.
And you sort of became the subject matter expert on that topic, right?
Yes, I'd say so.
Right, I mean, you were
For the
called
sheriff's
into,
office.
for the sheriff's office, right? But also you'd be called into meetings with Corporal Hancock and the prosecutors and try to educate them on those topics. Isn't that fair?
Yes,
Okay. I mean, you weren't running the case, were you?
No.
But you were there to assist not only with the evidence, but to be a specialist on this sort of unique topic. Fair?
yes,
And again, you said this on direct, but I think it got a little confusing perhaps. But there are never supposed to be live ammunition on a movie set.
You need to record that. I think, what are we thinking? Do you think that was picking up? Okay, go ahead. Yours is on though, right?
Yes, it is on.
Okay.
Thank you. You understood that there should never be live ammunition on a movie set, right?
yes,
And the one type of ammunition that occurs on movie sets is blanks, and those are the ones that just go poof, right?
correct.
Okay, and I'm just showing you 812. It's in evidence, right? And those have a crimped top, right?
Yes,
Okay, as opposed to dummy rounds, right? And I'm showing you 811. That's in evidence, right? Which look like real bullets, right?
correct.
And there were different types of dummy rounds, as I think you said on direct. But you can't tell necessarily that a dummy round is a dummy round just by looking at it.
Not always, no.
Some dummy rounds have holes in them, right?
Yes,
Others have their primers removed.
yes,
Some of them do not have holes in the side or their primers removed.
correct.
Some of them don't make a noise when they're shaken, called Denex rounds.
Yes,
And some dummy rounds look exactly like live rounds, correct?
yes,
And those look exactly like live ammunition, fair?
yes,
And those type of exact replica dummy rounds were on the set of Rust, right?
yes,
And those were Seth Kenny's dummy rounds, right?
yes,
And in terms of identifying dummy rounds by shaking them, right, which is something you talked about on direct, some of them are louder than others, right?
yes,
Some of them have one BB or two BBs in them or three BBs in them, right?
yes,
Sometimes if you shake a bullet, you can hear the powder, or because of oxidation, you can hear things inside of a bullet when you shake it, right?
yes,
And depending on the setting of something would impact the person's ability to hear it. Isn't that fair?
yes,
So, right, if I shook a dummy round right now in a courtroom in front of a microphone, right, it would probably be, you would be able to hear it. Would you agree?
yes,
But if people are all moving around in a movie set, you don't know that everybody would be able to hear it. Isn't that fair?
not everyone, no.
And some dummy rounds don't shake at all. Isn't that also true?
Yes,
The only way to determine definitively is to send them to the FBI and to take apart the dummy round to figure out what the powder is inside of it, right?
The powder inside of a dummy round?
Yeah,
Or the ball bearings?
Well, the ball bearings versus the powder that could be in a live ammunition.
Yes,
right?
that would be the comparison, yes.
And so one of the questions that I'm going to ask you is there different grades of gunpowder used in blanks versus live rounds?
I do not know the answer to that question.
Okay. And so as you proceed in this case, you are then executing the prop truck search at the scene of Rust, right?
Yes.
So about a week after the incident, approximately, you go back to the setting of Rust and you execute a search warrant on the truck that housed the prop cart that you found the shell casing on, right?
Yes.
And when you went to do that search warrant, it was light outside, right?
Correct.
And you were with your fellow officers, Hancock, Kano, Sergeant Zook was there, correct?
Yes.
And you had a good working relationship with all of these people, right?
Yes.
And Detective Hancock and Kano, signed off on what you collected as detectives involved in this, right?
Yes.
And Sergeant Zook, who was their supervisor, signed off as well. Fair?
Yes.
And there was a witness there that day that assisted law enforcement with the search of the prop truck, right?
Yes.
A man named Seth Kenny.
Correct.
And not only did he assist, he actually was the one that opened the safe, right?
Yes, he had the combination too.
Well, do you know how he got the combination?
He was the owner of the safe.
You sure about that?
That was my understanding.
You collected dozens of guns from the safe, right?
Yes.
And you understood that there were a dozen plus actors, extras, stuntmen that used firearms on the set of Rust?
Yes.
Just like we talked about with Mr. Ackles and his bandolier, right? A lot of these actors may have at one point or another, unbeknownst to them, God forbid, had live ammunition on them, right?
Yes.
And the prop truck, we can look at A13, was a little disorganized. I don't know if it's quite at the level of the cart, but it was a little disorganized, right?
Yes.
Okay, and we'll just show A14 for completeness. And inside the prop truck, there were boxes, right?
Yes.
Boxes of ammunition.
Correct.
And these boxes are sort of, a lot of them are the same shape, make, model, white box, right?
Yes.
And I'm just going to show you 816, which is a close-up. And do you notice one box that looks a little different than the other boxes?
Yes, there is.
And which box is that?
The box in the center, instead of it being stamped, it has handwritten in blue marker, dummy rounds 45 LC.
Right, and I'll just blow up that, which is in State's Exhibits, Exhibit 19, right?
Yes.
And you don't know who wrote that writing on it, do you?
Seth Kenny.
And if we could look at tell us what that is.
Out of context, no, I can't.
Okay, well then we're going to look at A23.
Can you move it up? Thank you. Sure. Okay. This is the rounds that were inside of that box with the styrofoam insert that were removed.
Okay, and you see that they are
I do not.
So we're in the prop truck and you have Starline brass, you have nickel primer, but they're not live. Right?
Correct.
And you don't know when that box ended up back. The 21st, you did it the 22nd. Is
Correct.
that fair?
Yes.
I apologize. So if you could do a search warrant in one day for one thing, why does it take 7 days to do a search warrant for something else?
I do not know the circumstances of why there was that time frame.
And so on direct examination, you pointed out that, and this is states 30. You said that these were the Seth Kenny dummies in the box, right?
Yes.
And you talked about that a bit on direct examination, right?
Correct.
And I think you were making a point that Seth Kenny's dummies look a little bit different than the live ammunition found on set. So perhaps there was a way to distinguish them. Was that the import of your testimony?
Yes.
But if you look at the picture of the Seth Kenny box as it's being opened, right? How many rounds are in there?
So there are 17.
So then how do you explain why there's more rounds in your picture of those dummies taken out of the box?
If I can refer to my report to refresh my memory.
It's fine with me, Ron.
Yeah.
It is right. Are you able to refresh your recollection?
Yes.
do you have an explanation for that?
Yes, so I apologize. The photo that was just up of the 22 rounds were actually removed from a bandolier that was located inside of the prop truck.
Defense A26, right?
Yes,
And it has the exact number as the picture you showed the jury, right?
yes,
Okay. And in fact, the real picture of the ammunition that comes out of Seth Kenny's box is this one, A27, right?
yes.
And I saw you counting.
I just wanted to make sure the number of rounds.
Fair enough. No, I think that's a good way to that's how I figured it out. That's from the right one though, right?
Yes.
And there's something important about this picture, isn't there?
Yes.
Doesn't that Seth Kenny round look exactly like the live round?
Under a camera flash, I suppose it could.
Well, I don't know about suppose it could. I mean, we'll look at the shell casing, Exhibit 28. And we'll go back. A27. We can go back. States 28. Don't you think they look an awful lot alike?
They look similar, yes, but I can still see differences.
Well, I mean, you're a trained investigator, right?
I'm trained crime scene tech, yes.
Even more than an investigator or crime scene tech, right?
Correct.
You have your Nikon 700 flash in your camera, right?
Yes.
You have the opportunity to take this ammunition back to the precinct, lay it out, and photograph it, right?
Yes.
You have no reason to think anybody on the set of Rust was able to do that, do you?
No.
You turned in your report. In this investigation, Hancock signed off on it, correct?
My supervisor signed off on my report.
Sergeant Zook?
At the time, yes.
So we're still on the topic of the ammunition, and you and law enforcement were trying to figure out the source of the live ammunition, correct?
Yes.
In fact, it was incumbent upon you to try to find the source, because if there were people sending live ammunition to movie sets, that would be very dangerous condition, wouldn't it be?
Yes.
And as you were going about your search, Seth Kenny actually walked into the precinct one day and gave you ammunition, right?
Yes.
Okay, you remember that, right?
I do.
That was. Did you think Mr. Kenny was being helpful?
I believe so, yes.
I mean, were you suspicious at all of that?
That was not my place to be suspicious of him. I hadn't had much interaction with him.
Yeah, I mean, it may not have been your place to, but I'm just asking you if after this point, Seth Kenny, comes knocking on the precinct and shows you all some rounds, whether or not that
Asked and answered.
I don't believe it was.
Overruled.
I'm just asking whether it's your place to be or not. I'm just asking when the man showed up and just presented ammunition to the precinct, did that make you suspicious at all?
No.
Well, let me ask you this. I bet it didn't surprise you that he didn't turn in the exact matching lethal ammunition, did it?
No, I wasn't surprised by that.
Okay. And so what he turned in, and now you have your report there if you need to refresh, but he walks into the precinct, and this is Seth Kenny. All right. And he gives you two different types of shell casings or ammunition, right? He gives you Starline brass. He gives you spent shell casings, right?
Yes.
And those were Starline brass, nickel primer, but they weren't live, right? They had been shot and they were spent shell casings, right?
If I can refer to my report to refresh. I don't recall if any of them were Starline brass.
If you turn to the last page,
Is there a specific item number that you're referring to?
item set, I think 215. You're going to be better at determining these reports than me.
Yes.
Okay. And he brought you, again, he also gave you live ammunition with nickel primers, but they weren't Starlight brass, right?
Yes.
Okay. So he just seems to have, he just missed sort of on what you were looking for, right?
Yes.
Because you were.
Yeah, objection to the form of question. She doesn't know what Seth Kinney's motives are.
No, I don't, I don't,
What he's
overruled.
I mean, you know that if Seth Kenney provided the live ammunition to the set, that's worse for Seth Kenney, right?
It's worse for whoever provided it. Yes.
I agree. So, but as members of law enforcement, you all know that the person who provided that would have a motive to not be found, true?
Yes.
So you headed to execute a search warrant at Seth Kenney's prop house, right?
Yes.
And a judge signed off on that search warrant, correct?
Yes.
Because you had probable cause to believe that there was live ammunition that matched the ammunition that killed Miss Hutchins, right?
Yes.
And this was you and again, Detective Hancock and Sergeant Zook, right?
Yes.
And yeah, I wanted to ask you, how come you executed the search warrant at night?
I don't recall.
And I wanted to ask you, how come Detective Kano waits outside?
I don't believe that Detective Kano was there the entirety of the search warrant.
So, well, while he was there, you know, do you know why? Do you have any information as to why he didn't come inside?
I do not.
Before you went on the search, you discussed it with Detective Hancock, correct?
Yes.
And just like the truck we talked about, you all had done nothing to secure this prop house while before you got the search warrant, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And tell the jury, how long did you wait to execute the search warrant at the prop house?
I don't recall.
Well, on direct examination, you knew the dates right away. Don't you remember? You nailed it.
Oh,
27, November 30th. Right?
I apologize. I thought you were asking from when it was written to when it was executed.
Oh, no, I apologize. Yes.
We executed the search warrant on November 30th.
Okay, so that was a month and a week, at least, right, after the incident in question.
Yes.
Okay. And just like the truck, you're executing the search warrant, and who was there to help you?
Seth Kinney.
And your purpose was to find the matching ammunition, correct?
Our purpose was to locate any .45 caliber live ammunition.
Well, sure, but the ultimate investigation that you all were conducting was to try to solve the open question of how the lethal round got on the movie set, right?
Yes.
And you talked a little bit about this when we talked about the prop part, how the disorganization of it could lead to commingling, right?
Yes. Things were organized and some were not.
Well, if you could give us a sense, did you find it to be more organized than the cart or less organized than the cart?
I would say they were probably about equal.
And you knew, did you not, that a dummy round can be turned into a live round and a live round. With spent shell casings or dummies, they could reuse them, correct?
Yes.
That would be economically efficient, right?
Yes.
And you knew as you enter this search that some of the ammunition on the set of Rust definitely came from Seth Kenny, right?
Yes,
He admitted that, right?
correct.
There were invoices he didn't.
Yes,
And you were also looking for tools that could be used to manufacture dummies and live ammunition, correct?
yes,
And you were also looking for a green ammo can, correct?
yes,
You know, the white boxes that we keep looking at are, they look like each other, right?
correct.
A green ammo can is a more unique item, fair?
Yes.
So why don't you tell the jury why you were looking for a green ammo can?
I don't recall specifically, other than at some point in time it had housed live rounds.
And law enforcement had that information at the time of going to a judge to get the search warrant, and very much at the time that they were executing the warrant, right?
Yes.
And I don't want to belabor the white box conversation too much, but other than, I'm going to have to find it too, on the white boxes that you found at the set, and at the white boxes that you saw a lot of at Seth Kenny's, there were these initials in the middle of the white box that said JS. Right? I'll just show you A2. Yeah. Right, that you found at the scene, correct?
Yes.
And if we look inside of Seth Kenny's prop house, A18, you see very similar font and signage. You on in your search, you understood Seth Kenny person, correct?
Yes.
Case, correct?
Yes.
And you even found out that the day before Seth Kenny provided the dummies to Rust, he had in his possession live Starline brass nickel primer from 1883, correct?
I don't recall it being the day before, or having that information personally.
Well, so let's leave the day before right now. You knew and understood that Seth Kenny had recently been in possession of Starline brass nickel primer live, correct?
I don't know that it was that specific, just that he was in possession of live ammunition in a recent point.
Now, when you testified on direct examination, you told the jury about how you found some live ammo at the prop house, right?
Yes.
And how you took that live ammo and sent it to the FBI, right?
Yes.
And you sent the live ammo from the set of Rust to the FBI, right?
Yes.
And you're not an FBI agent, but what you told the jury was that when you compared the powder from the set of Rust's ammunition to Seth Kenny's live ammunition, they didn't look the same, right?
Correct.
And you testified previously. Well, let me just ask you, did you take all of the 45 live ammunition from PDQ into evidence?
Yes.
And did you search every single box inside of Seth Kenny's prop house?
Yes.
And because you did that, according, is this still, what is that? Did I do something? No. Oh, it just goes to sleep. Talking too much. And because you've told this jury now that you found ammo there, correct?
Yes.
And that you searched every single box, correct?
Yes.
What you're telling this jury is they can be sure that if there was a live round on there that matched the set of Rust, you would have found it, right?
Yes.
Let's take a look at A19. Is that one of the rooms inside of the prop house?
Yes.
You see those boxes packed all the way to the ceiling?
Yes.
Did you all have a ladder or anything when you guys were searching?
No.
Okay. So can we agree that you didn't search the boxes at the top?
I believe they were taken down or at least looked into. It was not just myself searching.
Right, well, we talked about it. It was Kana was outside. It was you and Hancock and Zook, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, tell the jury. I mean, did you or did you not search every single one of those boxes?
We searched the entirety of the property. Yes.
Well, what do you mean when you say that you searched the entirety of the property?
I mean, if a box is opened and it is clear that there's no ammunition in it, meaning if I open a box and it's all clothing and I look at the bottom of the box and it's all clothing, then we're not going to dump the box out on the floor and continue to shake it until rounds that aren't in there fall out.
But okay, sure. Were there any boxes like that?
There were a multitude of boxes.
Got it. So, are you telling this jury that you're on your oath that you searched every single box in this room? That's just all I want to know.
Not me personally. Our team reasonably searched the warehouse.
Okay, and I think we're getting closer to, when you say reasonably searched, what do you mean by that?
I mean, how would you approach searching this kind of area?
Well, I can tell you that law enforcement, I know from the movies. Okay. I'll move on. Well, why don't you tell me, what's a grid search?
A grid search is usually conducted outside, where you would reasonably set up in a way that you could grid an area and then search each section on that grid.
Okay, and well, why don't you tell me, what would have been, if you wanted to be certain, the best way to search this room if you had unlimited resources and time?
I believe that when we searched this room, we divided the room in order for it to be searched.
Divided it how?
Meaning myself took one section, Sergeant Zook took another section, Detective Hancock took another section.
Are you certain of that, or are you best estimate that that's what your memory tells you?
I do not recall exactly how the room was searched.
Okay, and then let's say you open up a box with ammunition. How would you search an individual box?
It would depend on the box.
So tell me.
If we open a box and it's all 38s, we're not looking for 38s at that time, we're looking for 45s.
Okay. And so if you opened up a box and it was commingled rounds, how would you do it?
We would have to go through those rounds individually.
Right, and there were boxes like that here, right?
There were a few, yes.
Okay. And how many rooms were there inside of this location that had lots of boxes in them?
There was the back room that we see here. There was a front room that didn't have many boxes, and then a side room that had nicely organized boxes.
And what about the bathroom? Weren't there boxes in ammunition bathroom?
There were boxes in the bathroom, yes.
So 4 rooms, right?
Yes.
3 of you, 4 rooms, right?
Yes.
820. What are we looking at here, Investigator Pablo?
This was a table that was located in the side room.
Okay, and what do you notice? I don't know why that arrow's there. What do you notice on this? It's probably because of me. What do you notice on this table of, clear, thank you, sir. What's on this table? What is this?
There were plastic bags, tools, cleaning products, tape.
Okay, and as we talked about before, the search warrant told you to look for tools, right?
Yes.
Okay, and Detective Hancock spent some time in this room during the search, correct?
Yes, I believe so.
And do you know what all these tools are? Are you familiarity with these tools?
I'm not, no.
Okay, you don't know what they can be done. You don't know how they can be used with either firearms or ammunition, do you?
No.
Okay, so tell the members of the jury which of these tools you seized.
We did not take any tools from the warehouse.
When you were searching this area, did you have a schematic or a floor plan?
No, I don't believe so.
Did you go one room at a time, or did you split up?
I don't recall.
Was there a predetermined plan of how to search this and to confirm that there were no further live bullets?
The predetermined plan was that I went in myself first and did overall photographs of everything in place, and then we conducted the search.
Did you do those letters like we saw in the prop truck so you could keep track of everything? Remember when we were looking in the church that there were those letters up so that you could sort of keep track and make sure you got everything? Did you use those letters?
No, I did not.
And of course, Seth Kenny was there and being helpful again, right?
Yes.
He told you that there were no 45 long Colts there and offered to show you the dummy rounds at one point. Do you remember that?
I don't recall that.
Do you remember him saying, I bet you $1,000 there's no 45 long Colts in there?
I do recall that, yes.
Okay. And did he win the bet?
He did not.
He lost the bet. So he tells you that, and law enforcement continues, and you look in the bathroom, and you found them, right?
Yes.
Let me ask you something. At any point, did you become suspicious of Seth Kenny?
No.
A21. You were able to find this container that says live ammo on it, right?
Yes.
And that was helpful to whoever wrote that to show you where the live ammo was, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's one of the reasons you looked in that bin. Somebody labeled it live, right?
Well, we were looking in all of those bins, yes.
Every single...
I believe there was camera equipment stacked on top of it.
Right, and?
And when they're opened and you see that it's camera equipment, we close it back up and went to the box on the bottom that stated there was live ammo in it.
Doesn't this handwriting and label look kind of like that dummy round label we saw on the box that had that round you and I looked at? States 19.
Yes, it is similar, yes.
And that box that had the live rounds in it, there were a couple things that you found at PDQ. This handwriting is getting worse. Right? At PDQ, you found, and that's the prop house. That's the name of the prop house, right?
Yes.
Okay. You found, bless you, Starline Brass Live, no nickel, and you found Starline, you found nickel primer lives, no Starline Brass, right?
Correct.
Every time you were with Seth Kenny, you got close to finding something that matched the scene, Starline Brass, nickel primer live, but it was always one off, wasn't it?
Yes.
And as you continued on your search, you found the green ammo can, right?
Yes.
And again, it was helpfully labeled, right?
Yes, I believe it was behind that box. I think you weren't able to obviously see it.
I see. But it also had a helpful label on it, didn't it?
Yes.
It said empty, right?
Yes.
And it looks a lot like the handwriting in States 19 and the helpful handwriting at A21 that says live, right?
Yes.
And it was taking a long time to go through those boxes, wasn't it?
Yes.
And Detective Hancock was wearing her lapel camera, right?
I believe so, yes.
Have you reviewed that camera?
I have not.
You remember you and you said to Detective Hancock, you know, this is taking a long time. We really need to spot that.
Objection relevance?
What's relevant? What's
The
relevant?
relevance
Does it
is
have
that
any
it's-
more tendency to?
Sure.
I'm going to sustain the objection.
Okay. Did you and Detective Hancock start joking around that it was going to take too long to search every box?
I don't recall that.
Do you deny it?
No.
And there are times in this search where you pick up a box and you just shake the whole box, right?
I don't recall that.
Can we play that video?
I'm confused, is he refreshing or is he impeaching?
It doesn't matter. It's just a video. It's not a statement.
No, it does matter because she said she doesn't recall.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. Do you deny you, in parts of your search, just picking up a box and shaking it to see if it shook or not? Do you deny that?
No.
And so, but if you shook an entire box to see if it had a rattle in it, you wouldn't be able to be sure whether or not every single live round, it was all live rounds or a commingled group, correct?
Correct.
In fact, that's the entire basis of the case of what you believe the armorer to have done. Commingled, live, and dummies, right?
Yes.
And yet at the search being conducted to find the source of the lethal round, law enforcement is doing the very same thing that you're complaining about the armorer doing on the set, right?
Yes.
And when you left that search, you are not, as you sit here, sure you got every live round, are you?
No.
And actually, if you look at the boxes inside of that location, you didn't even search half of them. Did you?
I don't recall.
So then why on direct examination, if you do not recall, did the prosecutor ask you and you tell this jury that you were confirming that you searched and found every single live round? Why did you testify to that?
I found what I believe to be all the live rounds at the warehouse.
But that's not what you said. What you said was that you found every live round, right?
I don't recall the exact words that I stated.
Well, you certainly said that you searched every single box just 10 minutes ago in front of this jury, right?
I believe that a reasonable search was conducted of the warehouse.
An investigator, I understand you were prepped before you testified today, correct?
I spoke with the prosecution before I testified yesterday.
Okay. And the jury heard something about pre-trial interviews where you're interviewed and the defense can be there to watch you be interviewed, right?
Yes.
But every time you talk to the prosecutors, defense is not there, correct?
Correct.
In fact, the vast majority of times you speak to the prosecutors, the defense is not there, correct?
Correct.
In fact, you and I had never met before today, or yesterday, I guess, correct?
Yes.
So, you just said, when you originally said that you searched every box, okay, that itself is not accurate, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So now what you're saying is that you did a reasonable search, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the other thing that the search warrant asked you to take was the cameras and the camera equipment, the surveillance footage from PDQ, right?
I don't recall that.
Okay, I'm going to pass up the warrant to refresh your recollection. Well, do you recall that there was camera equipment there?
There was lots of camera equipment inside of the warehouse.
In fact, you remember Seth Kenny showed you the camera equipment, right?
I don't recall exactly.
Okay, I'm just going to mark this. This is defense Z and just approach just quickly.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Are you going to mark that? Well, she's going to identify it and then you're going to.
I'm just going to see the refresh. Does that refresh your recollection about the
No, it doesn't.
Take it back. And I'm going to pass you the warrant and ask you, this is DX23, if this refreshes your recollection of if you were supposed to.
X23?
Yes.
What?
Yes, Your Honor, DX23. Oh.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, I need to know.
No, we need to refresh.
It's just, I'm just to refresh, I can make it DX
So,
and
but why are we marking it?
Yeah, why are we marking it?
then I will mark it.
Yes.
Unmarked.
Yes.
Okay, I'm not seeking to introduce this. I'm just simply asking, does this refresh your recollection that the warrant commanded you to take the video footage? Number 6.
She can refresh her memory without being directed.
Of surveillance footage, yes.
Okay. And so, and you tell the jury, did you take the surveillance footage?
No.
You didn't take the surveillance footage, even though that footage could have shown when people came and left the prop house, correct?
I don't recall if there was surveillance footage.
And the photograph of Mr. Kenny showing the surveillance footage didn't refresh your memory?
No, because I'm standing in the foreground of that photo.
Okay, well.
Design, develop, scale, repeat. Wix Studio, the platform for agencies and enterprises.
See that I have 2 really big monitors on here, as well as my tower, which by itself is like 50 pounds. Uplift Desk can handle up to 355 pounds of weight. So if I really wanted to, I can totally sit on this thing and use the motor and it will hold my weight. In fact, I ordered an optional hammock from Uplift and I've used it several times if I need a quick little cat nap. The 70-inch desk is just wide enough to fit the hammock underneath. You just climb in, you hit that motor to raise it off the ground, and then you can chill out. My cat loved it too.
Looking for it.
And if you had taken that footage, if any there were, right? You agree with me that it would have shown when people were coming and going from the prop house, potentially, correct?
That's a possibility, yes.
It's a possibility you could have seen when the ammo can got there, right?
Possibly, yes.
You could have seen Sarah Zachary picking up the ammunition, correct?
Possibly, yes.
You could have seen Seth Kenny disposing of ammunition in the 40 days between when the incident happened and when you arrived, correct?
Possibly, yes.
And there's one other thing that it would have shown, isn't there?
I don't know.
Well, it would have shown whether or not you all really searched the place, wouldn't it have?
Possibly, yes.
And so you didn't take it. You did not voucher any of the surveillance footage.
I do not recall looking for the surveillance footage.
Well, again, I know that answer, but you know what you vouchered in this case, correct?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
You didn't take into your custody and add to the evidence any surveillance footage, correct?
No.
And you never spoke to any witnesses, you yourself, about what you found at PDQ later, did you?
No.
And you testified on direct examination that you did collect DNA, phones, prints, things like that in this case, right?
Yes.
And you got the armorer, the first assistant director, Dave Hall's, Sarah Zachary, and Alec Baldwin's phones, right?
I did not. I don't believe so.
You ultimately vouchered?
I would have to refer to my report. I don't believe I collected all of those things.
Okay. What about DNA extractions?
I did collect DNA swabs from certain individuals, yes.
Okay. Including Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, Dave Halls, Sarah Zachary, Alec Baldwin?
Not Alec Baldwin, but the rest.
Okay. And what about prints, fingerprints?
Yes.
Okay. From Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, Dave Halls, Sarah Zachary?
Yes.
Okay. Did you take the cell phone of Seth Kenny?
I don't believe so, no.
Did you take the prints of Seth Kenny?
No.
Did you take the DNA of Seth Kenny?
No.
Everything that you did take into your custody, in law enforcement's custody in this case, is in your supplemental report. Is that fair?
Yes.
And most importantly of all, it's your testimony you never were able to discover the source of the live ammunition, correct?
I don't believe that's in my supplemental report. I'm not sure how you're phrasing that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure. I'm asking you. When we started, we were talking about solving this question of how a live round got in a movie set. Remember that?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm asking you, this trying to solve that question, did you ever solve it?
I do not have any physical evidence to show where the live rounds originated from.
And I was asking you questions earlier about how come the search happened at night, right?
Yes.
Do you remember?
I don't recall.
Okay. Why Detective Connor stood outside?
I don't recall.
Okay. Isn't the truth that you were just trying to get this over with so that the prosecutors could focus on Alec Baldwin?
No.
You personally believe Alec Baldwin committed no crime. Isn't that the truth?
No.
Your Honor, please, can we approach?
Don't do that. I'm going to strike that question, okay? I'm going to strike the question. You're going to disregard it, okay, and the answer.
There is zero evidence in this case that Alec Baldwin brought a live round onto set, correct?
Correct.
There is zero evidence in this case that Alec Baldwin loaded that live round into that gun, right?
Correct.
And after this, and you turn to the next chapter of this case, is when the order came from you all, meaning you, the prosecutors, Detective Hancock, to order the testing on the firearm, right?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Wasn't a good question. As this case moved forward, after what we just discussed, you, Detective Hancock and the prosecutors, made the request to the FBI to order the accidental discharge test, right?
I don't recall when that request was made exactly.
Well, forget exactly when it was made. Do you have any general recollection?
I don't.
Okay. Are you testifying that you don't know whether it was after the PDQ search?
I don't recall.
Okay. And at that time, when that test was ordered, you knew that Mr. Baldwin had told you that he had just pulled the hammer of the gun and not the trigger, correct?
I don't recall.
Okay. I'm going to refresh your recollection. I need to find it. And while I'm doing that, you did assist in the taking of the firearm. Which one? You were involved in the requests coming from the team, right? I'm referring to you, the prosecutors, Detective Hancock, right? You understand when I say team, what I mean?
Yes.
Okay. You were involved in the request from the team to the FBI about what tests to order throughout this case. Isn't that true?
Yes.
And these were very much group decisions that you made. Of what you would test, fair?
Yes.
And everywhere in this case that you went, Detective Hancock went, right?
Yes.
So when you were at the church, the day that it happened, Detective Hancock was there, right?
Yes.
And then, when you were at the truck search, she was there, right?
Yes.
In the precinct with Seth Kennedy, she was there, right?
Yes.
At the PDQ search, she was there, right?
Yes.
And every time something happened in this case, you all would meet with the prosecutors to keep them updated, correct?
Occasionally, yes.
Well, when you say occasionally, investigate a problem, what do you mean by occasionally?
I mean that I was not always in direct contact with them about every single thing that would occur.
I'm going to approach and show the witness.
You have got to show Ms. Morrissey.
Yes, she has a copy.
Well, she doesn't know.
What you're looking at, I don't know what line you're looking at. You told me I have a copy of the previous transcript.
It is. Again,
Page
it's
and line, please.
the body worn camera from 10/21/21.
Page and line, please.
Page 3, line 1.
Same objection, Your Honor. Ms. Popple is not in this transcript.
Well, he's what are you doing? Asking her to refresh her
I'm
memory?
just, she was there, I'm asking if it refreshes her recollection.
All right. Overruled.
Does that refresh your recollection about what Mr. Baldwin told you at the scene?
Not particularly.
Okay. Would it be helpful if you saw the video from the lapel camera of you and Mr. Baldwin at the scene and listened to it? Would that be helpful?
No.
That wouldn't be helpful to you, Investigator Powell?
I'm not denying that these statements were made, but I do not recall all of the information that was being stated at that time.
I understand that, but you're here to do your best, right?
Yes.
And you want to be fair to Mr. Baldwin, right?
Yes.
So you don't know that if I show you the video of you at the scene, it won't refresh your recollection?
Is this going to turn into a full-blown sidebar? That last one took forever.
Investigator Popple, are you willing to watch the body-worn camera, the lapel, from 10/21 to refresh your recollection at a break?
Yes.
Okay. And you would agree with me, it may refresh your recollection, true?
Yes.
Okay. And whatever information you had from Mr. Baldwin at the time, well, let me ask you this. Withdrawn. Did you tell Mr. Baldwin, don't worry, we're going to find the source of the live ammunition, or words to that effect?
I don't recall stating that.
You don't deny it, though, do you?
No.
You and the team end up ordering the accidental discharge test, I think you call it the drop test, on the firearm in question, right?
Yes.
And when you all ordered that test, the FBI told you that this test may very well destroy the gun, right?
I don't recall that.
Okay, well, let's, I can't put anything on her screen, so I have to keep passing it out. I'm going to show you an email in a minute. But you do agree with me that you were involved in the team's decision to send that firearm off to the FBI for that testing, correct?
Yes.
Okay. That firearm that you told me earlier in my examination was something that you were entrusted to keep track of and to protect, right?
Yes.
A piece of evidence that you knew was critical in this case, correct?
Yes.
And the FBI told you in no uncertain terms that if they do this test on the firearm, it would alter the condition of the firearm, correct?
I don't recall that.
Okay. We're going to pass up an email to you because I can't show you on the screen, I don't think. You can? Okay. We can show it on the screen, apparently, as I understand.
Is there a reason you can't just walk up and just?
Well,
do
I
it?
You can find it. Listen, you can look at it too. So just come up here before
I have it, right? Okay, we have it.
They have it.
Are we good?
I'm just gonna pass up.
Okay, but I need to look.
It's just, you know.
No, there's a.
Jennifer?
Hey,
Wait,
I have
she
not
has to-
reviewed this. Okay, can I have a second?
Yes. Do you all want to be on the recording for this? Let's just,
Point out to me how this is
well,
supposed to
first of all, just, she can look at the whole document and see if it refreshes her memory,
That's
okay?
exactly what I was
Move on.
And you see your email address on that email?
Yes, I do.
Well, let her, see if she can refresh her memory.
Of course, I just wanted to point out.
Uh-huh.
Does that refresh your recollection?
Yes.
Okay.
Take it back. Thank you.
Thank you. And it is true, right? You're on this email, correct?
Yes.
And on April 21st, 2022, which is after the search of the prop house, you and the team sent the firearm for testing at the FBI, correct?
Yes.
I apologize. I think I've been handed the wrong thing. Can we approach?
You can have my copy. I'll take yours then.
Hang on. May we approach?
Yes.
Sorry for the interruption. I'm going to ask the court reporter to read back the exact same question. Please.
And on April 21st, 2022, which is after the search. Oh, I'm so sorry. And on April 21st, 2022, which is after the search of the prop house, you and the team sent the firearm for testing at the FBI, correct? Yes.
And that was truthful testimony and accurate testimony that you just gave, correct?
Yes.
And at the time that you sent it to the FBI for accidental discharge testing, which I believe you discussed on your direct examination, didn't you?
Yes.
Okay. So at the time you did that, you knew that the testing would cause this firearm.
Sorry.
At the time that this testing was ordered, you knew that the firearm would no longer be in the same physical condition you recovered it in, correct?
Yes.
Let's take a break. Thank you.
All right, we're going to take our lunch break. Please don't talk among yourselves or anyone else about the evidence received here in court, and please don't come back until 2 o'clock. Okay? 2.
All rise to the jury. Jurors, please take your passes.
All right, we're in. All right, we're in recess. Council approach.
Your Honor, as I indicated,
Housekeeping.
we're just going to provide a laptop to investigate the break. Thank you.
Some of the, your excuse. See you at 2 o'clock. Actually, you're probably going to.
Hey there, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to watch our coverage of the Alec Baldwin trial. Look,
I stepped out of the room. What time did she say they were coming back from lunch? Because I thought I heard 2 p.m. and that seems remarkably late. So, I don't know, maybe I'll go, let's see.
Examination, didn't you?
Yes.
Okay. So at the time you did that, you knew that the testing.
This is where I stepped out of the room.
At the time that this testing was ordered, you knew that the firearm would no longer be in the same physical condition you recovered it in, correct?
Yes.
Let's take a break. Thank you.
All right, we're going to take our lunch break. Please don't talk among yourselves or anyone else about the evidence received here in court, and please don't come back until 2 o'clock. Okay? 2.
All rise for the
Wow, I did hear correctly.
All right, we're
Let me just verify that they are in the same time zone as we are in Salt Lake.
all right. We're in recess. Council approach.
Your Honor, as I indicated,
Okay,
yeah, as I
2
indicated,
hours.
we're just gonna provide a laptop to investigate the break. Thank you.
Well,
See you at.
that being the case, I think we need to break this down into an afternoon session because 2 hours is a lot of time. So, okay, well, I will set up an afternoon session and enjoy your lunch. Hope it's productive. And I'm going to go throw a roast in the oven. So I've got 2 of them that need to get used up right away. So I will see you at 2 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. Thanks. Bye-bye.